Hello, all you freedom-loving people. The confirmation hearing for RFK Jr. had a few points to highlight. Rubio is moving forward with Trump's plans, and a former Obama aide was arrested for attempted child rape. Okay, let's get into it. President Trump has repeatedly said that he wants the Panama Canal back, and he has not ruled out the use of military force. On Thursday, he renewed his pressure on the Panama authorities. The Panama Canal is a key route for the U.S. Navy to maneuver ships and submarines between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, and it is critical to its strategic deployment. Currently, Panama is a member of the Chinese Communist Party's One Belt, One Road initiative. Nearly 40 Chinese companies have already started up operations in Panama in areas such as mining, finance, logistics, and telecommunications. Appearing before the U.S. Senate Commerce Committee hearing on the Panama Canal on January 28th, Eugene Kontorovich, a professor at George Mason University and an expert on Israeli law, said that if the U.S. determines that the Chinese Communist Party's disproportionate influence on the Panama Canal or the exorbitant tolls are undermining the canal's neutrality, then the U.S. would have preemptive right to intervene. The Panama authorities are not budging yet, though. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is headed to Panama on his first trip of his tenure. Panama President Jose Raul Molino has a message for Rubio that the Panama Canal is not up for discussion. Molino said at a press conference on Thursday, "It's impossible. I cannot negotiate and much less open a process of negotiation over the canal. That's sealed. The canal belongs to Panama." But at the same time, Panama has been removing Chinese signboards from the streets at a rapid pace. President Trump went on Truth Social and threatened that Panama cannot get away with this. President Trump wrote, "Panama is, with great speed, attempting to take down 64% of signs which are written in Chinese. They are all over the zone because China controls the Panama Canal. Panama is not going away with this." In an interview on the Megyn Kelly show yesterday, Rubio said that President Trump's interest in purchasing Greenland was no joke. He emphasized that the purchase of Greenland is in the national interest of the United States. Rubio said, "This is not a joke. This is not about acquiring land for the purpose of acquiring land. This is in our national interest and it needs to be solved. The U.S. has a defense agreement with Denmark to protect Greenland if it comes under assault." Rubio said, "If we're already on the hook for having to do that, then we might as well have more control over what happens there." Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has called on European allies to oppose President Trump's acquisition of Greenland after she reportedly had a tense phone conversation with President Trump. Rubio says he hasn't spoken to Frederiksen, but he believes that President Trump will be forthright with people, and he believes that in many cases, diplomacy is more effective when you're blunt rather than using platitudes and meaningless language. So, can the U.S. buy Greenland in the next 4 years?
So let's look forward 4 years. Does the U.S. own Greenland?
We'll see. I mean, obviously that's the president's priority, and he has made that point. I think that what I can tell you about 4 years without getting into specifics, because I don't, we're not in a position yet to discuss exactly how we'll proceed tactically. What I think you can rest assured of is that 4 years from now, our interest in the Arctic will be more secure. Our interest in the Panama Canal will be more secure. Our partnerships in the Western Hemisphere will be stronger. We need to understand a lot of these countries in Central America, they're not destination sites. They are countries that migrants come through, and that these human trafficking rings run people through. It creates tremendous instability for these countries at a tremendous cost as well. They would welcome help in stopping that migration corridor from continuing because it's destabilizing their countries. So I think we're going to have a Western Hemisphere that's more secure, and our national interest in all parts of the world, that's the goal, are going to be more secure from the Arctic to Central America to even Africa.
And it seems President Trump's administration is not joking on other issues either. As confirmed by the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, the administration will impose tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China starting tomorrow.
I was just with the president in the Oval Office, and I can confirm that tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place at a statement several weeks ago continues. The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. These are promises made and promises kept by the president.
Also, the 51 former Intel officials who falsely claimed that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian interference have now been banned from entering federal buildings. Former CIA Director John Brennan was also banned from all federal buildings. And the assistant director at the FBI Washington field office, David Sundberg, has officially been fired and is preparing to exit the bureau. David Sundberg is the highest-ranking FBI official to be fired by President Trump in his second term. President Trump fired FBI Director James Comey during his first term. Sundberg oversaw the January 6 investigation, and according to NBC, the purge is much larger than originally reported. It includes more than 20 heads of FBI field offices. Also, employees at multiple federal agencies, such as the Transportation Department, Energy Department, HHS, and CDC, were ordered to remove pronouns from their email signatures by Friday afternoon. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. attended his second Senate confirmation hearing on Thursday. At the end of the first of Wednesday's 3.5-hour-long confirmation hearings, Kennedy Jr. was recognized by Senator Mike Crapo, a Republican from Idaho, and the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee who presided over the hearings. He thanked Kennedy Jr. for taking the time to answer the senator's questions outside of the hearing, and he said that RFK Jr. had endured the most thorough committee process of any nominee in this Congress. Then on Thursday, senators of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Welfare, the Senate Help Committee, were once again rigorously questioned and scrutinized for their past anti-vaccine comments. Senator Bill Cassidy presided over the hearing. In his opening statement, he said that he and Kennedy Jr. were in complete agreement on the issue of regulating ultra-processed food to reduce the incidence of diabetes. But Kennedy Jr.'s longtime skepticism about the effectiveness of some vaccines has Cassidy deeply concerned. Cassidy was a doctor. He recalls an 18-year-old patient of his who suffered liver failure from hepatitis B, which he believes could have been prevented by the vaccine. Kennedy Jr.'s rallying cry will have a huge impact on the healthcare choices that Americans make. So he asked whether Kennedy Jr. would use his credibility to support science-based healthcare or to undermine it. Finally, Cassidy was indecisive about whether to vote for Kennedy Jr. He said that as a Republican, he wanted to support President Trump's agenda, but he also is concerned that Kennedy Jr.'s common sense approach to vaccines would have an adverse effect on the president's second term. So he may contact Kennedy Jr. over the weekend to discuss the matter further. Kennedy Jr. has also sincerely stated that his children are vaccinated, and he is not questioning all vaccines. And RFK Jr. is willing to change his position if there are studies that prove him wrong, and he's even willing to apologize for misleading the public if he is proven wrong about anything. But the most heated part of the hearing occurred when Help Committee ranking member Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders pressed Kennedy Jr. on the issue of lowering prescription drug costs. Sanders asked, "If we want to make America healthy, will you ensure the American people that you will fight to do what every other major country on earth does and guarantee health care to every single American?" Kennedy replied, "I'm going to make America healthier than other countries of the world right now." Kennedy Jr. said that the corruption that leads to high drug prices exists not only in the pharmaceutical industry, but also in Congress. He said, "Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry and protecting their interests." Sanders angrily refuted the accusation. Sanders claimed that when he ran for president, he received millions and millions of contributions, but not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers. But Kennedy said, "In 2020, you were the single largest receiver of pharmaceutical money." Sanders then yelled, because I received from workers all over the country. Workers, not a nickel from corporate PACs. But Kennedy again said, you're the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars. According to Open Secrets, Sanders received $115,690 in donations from the pharmaceutical industry between 2019 and 2024, but these are only the donations that came from individuals. Kennedy Jr. said again that Sanders received huge sums of money from the pharmaceutical industry, $1.5 million, Kennedy said. Then Sanders finally agreed, saying, yeah, out of $200 million. Then Kennedy was asked about the funding by Missouri Senator Josh Hawley.
On NIH, under the first Trump presidency, HHS stopped new NIH research that involved human fetal tissue from elective abortions. Now, you were asked about this sort of tangentially yesterday by Senator Cantwell, and I want to get your quote right. You said to her correctly, you said stem cell research today can be done on umbilical cords and you don't need any fetal tissue, which is correct. My question to you is, will you reinstate President Trump's policy that ensures that no federal research and no federal tax dollars is conducted on fetal tissue taken from elective abortions?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Kennedy Jr.'s views on abortion are also a matter of concern. Though he leans pro-choice, Kennedy has vowed to support President Trump's pro-life policies and positions, and he has said that every abortion is a tragedy.
I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy. I agree with him that we cannot be a moral nation if we have 1.2 million abortions a year. I agree with him that the states should control abortion. President Trump has told me that he wants to end late-term abortions, and he wants to protect conscience exemptions, and that he wants to end federal funding for abortions here or abroad. That's Title X. I serve at the pleasure of the president. I'm going to implement his policy.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, a Republican, wants his Democratic colleagues to be fair about Kennedy Jr.'s open-minded views of the existing science.
You know, I think the discussion over vaccines is so oversimplified and dumbed down that we never really get to real truths, and it's why people up here are so separated from real people at home. So we talk about hepatitis B. It's a terrible disease. It could lead to liver failure, as the chairman said. But the reason you have distrust from people at home, why they don't believe anything you say, they don't believe government at all, is you're telling my kid to take a hepatitis B vaccine when he's 1 day old. You get it through drug use and sexually transmitted. That's how you get hepatitis B. But you're telling me my kid has to take it at 1 day old. That's not science. And so every person with a bit of common sense, even people who don't resist vaccines, I vaccinated all my kids. I believe vaccines are one of the modern miracles beyond all pale. The Speckled Monster is a great book about the introduction of the smallpox vaccine in 1720 into our country. All miracles. But I'm not a one-size-fits-all. It's not all or nothing. I chose to wait on my hepatitis B vaccine, and we did it when they went to school. Does that make me an awful person? Does that make me an anti-vaxxer because I questioned the government dictate of whether I do it? And I'm not speaking for anybody else. I'm only speaking for myself. But for goodness sakes, let's have an honest debate about these things. The COVID vaccine.
Rand Paul did not make use of his time to ask questions. He only appealed to his colleagues to not be too harsh on Kennedy. He said that science is developing, and what is considered right today may be proven wrong in the future.
But we shouldn't just close the door and say we're no longer, because we believe so much in submission, we're not going to have an open mind to study these things. And so it's sort of this crazy notion. Schizophrenia, I would put in the same notion. You have a kid who's completely normal to 18 or 19, and their brain goes haywire. How does that happen? It's the most bizarre disease. Shouldn't we be open? Could it be our food? It might be vaccines, it might be our food, but autism's more common. I don't know about the schizophrenia statistics, but autism's more common. Shouldn't we want to be open-minded? Instead, we're so close-minded and we're so consensus-driven that the science says this. Well, science doesn't say anything. Science is a dispute, and 10 years from now, we could all be wrong.
Rand Paul hoped that members would not prejudge their positions when discussing the issue of abortion.
That's what a country's about. It's what dissent is about. So just ask you to look at the larger picture and give the guy a break who says, I just want to follow the science where it leads without presupposition. I think really what we have up here is presupposition. You've already concluded. It's absolute that autism isn't caused by it. we don't know what causes autism, so we should be more humble in what we say.
Rahamin Shai, a former senior advisor to Barack Obama, has been sentenced to 11 and a half years in prison. In February of 2024, he traveled to England. The purpose of his trip was to meet a 9-year-old girl for sex. In his luggage were cuddly toys and condoms. He planned his trip for around 1 month. He contacted a woman who claimed she was the child's grandmother but was actually an undercover police officer. So he was arrested as soon as he arrived in England. During the trial, the court heard how Shai detailed how he had abused the girl despite her age of 9 being a bit late. Despite this, he insisted that it was an honor to be her first. On Wednesday, Shai was convicted of arranging to commit a child sex offense and possession of indecent photographs of children. Shai previously served as a senior policy advisor in the Obama administration focusing on counterterrorism, and he also served under then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Between 2008 and 2014, he was said to have been working at the United States Treasury Department, advising the White House on strategies to combat the financing of terrorism by groups such as Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember that every like, comment, and share helps more people to see the truth. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you have already subscribed, we thank you. But please double check to make sure that you're still subscribed, because some of our audience have reported that they're somehow unsubscribed without their knowledge. We've also heard that many of you don't get notifications of our videos anymore on YouTube. So when you do subscribe on YouTube, please make sure to tap the notification bell as well. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.